Howdy folks, Jeff Salzman here and welcome to the Daily Evolver. Today I just want to do a quick update on the state of American politics post Super Tuesday, where we now have a two-man race between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. To examine this event and see what it might portend for the future, I invited my esteemed integral colleagues, Terry Patten and Diane Musho Hamilton, onto a conversation. We have these conversations all the time. We just basically turned on the recorder here. But they're my integral political pals, and we're gonna see if we can sort it out. You know, last week at this time, I put out a podcast where I was sorting through the final six, and I had my three I had ruled in, my three I had ruled out, and my three in were Bloomberg, Bernie, or Pete. And this was before the South Carolina primary and all of that. But then what a shift. I mean, I had put Biden in the rearview mirror. I mean, I had written him off.
Yeah.
Most of us had, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, trying to wrap my head around it. And I thought I would call on my two best political integral buddies. And we've been through the mill together, including, if I may remind us, the celebration of the first woman president dinner, where you were my honored guests. November 8th, it was 2016.
Do you remember?
Why we would be subjecting people to our wisdom after that, I have no idea. But
that
here we are.
A very good question, Jeff. It's a very, very good question.
So what do you think? Di, where are you at with this?
Well, I think that where I'm at with it is that the country, the Democratic side of that there are two kind of major thoughts, and one is progressive and is Bernie, and one is more moderate. And I think people are feeling conservative. They just simply want to make sure that they get Trump out of office. And, you know, he's a known product. He has a good relationship. You know, he has a good track record in many, many ways. I mean, obviously he has shortcomings. People really don't like him in debates. And apparently he has a lot of gaffes and difficulties with his speech, and that upsets everyone. But he's a reliable man, and he's a good person, and he's got a lot of years in the game, and people just kind of are going to a known product. Is that too simple?
No, I think I'm actually encouraged by it. I'm happy to be really wrong about this, because
maybe what Biden's big victory shows is that
after 4 years of Trump, the country really just does need to have itself more in the hands of somebody who's decent and competent and who's suffered.
He'll put good people around him. I mean, there are all kinds of issues with Biden. We can talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
What do you think, Terry? What happened?
I saw it coming a little bit early. I'm sobered because I've been engaging with all the people who didn't like what I posted.
Yeah,
what did you
fill
post?
Diane on that, Terry.
Yeah, so mainly what I posted was I very early saw that this was determinative and that Biden was going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
And then I was saying there's a really necessary role for the revolution. The revolution has to continue. Those rallies have to get stronger. They have to build real influence and function a little bit like a Tea Party of the left, but very much hold the whole Democratic Party and establishment infrastructure's feet to the fire relative to corporate capture and all that. Mm-hmm. But I also said, you know, he should moderate his negativity toward Biden and stuff. And it just pissed people off. Most of the folks who commented were heartbroken, and you know, they had not given up on Bernie one bit. And they were, and they still haven't. And they think that it's an age thing. These were all mostly younger people, and their assertions. I mean, there are a lot of different assertions. Some of them are unhealthy distortions, like a kind of black and white thinking that because Biden has made so many compromises with entrenched political interests and establishment and corporate and moneyed interests over time, he is nothing but a dupe of those interests.
Right. I know. Yeah.
the worst of it, but then there were intelligent things like, look at this passion, look at the way we fill stadiums, this is how you win elections, this is where the soul of the party is. If you don't have the young people, you don't have anything. I mean, they're right about a lot of what they're putting.
Well, although I will say this, just one quick aside. I mean, I did read an op-ed by Michelle Goldberg in the Times, and she said that part of what Bernie has really struggled with is that there hasn't actually been that level of turnout from the young people in the primaries. And we have to pay attention to that. I mean, I agree with them that there's a lot of energy, and I think the progressive agenda that wants to put a check on some of this runaway, capitalist policies makes a lot of sense, but he didn't turn the youth out at the level that he would have had to win the nomination, is what I understand.
It's funny. I mean, I was looking at statistics over decades. Young people don't vote.
They don't vote,
and it's in a way maddening to me, and it surprises me until I remember myself. As a political science major during Watergate, I didn't vote.
Because you didn't know how to vote, or
no,
because
I was living my life. I was doing something else. I was talking politics, 5 hours a day, but voting, it was quaint. I don't know. Whatever. It just. So I'm sort of trying to, wrap my head around this, but one thing for Biden is apparently he has the heart of the blacks. And that's such an important constituency that Hillary didn't have, not to the degree that he does. He's almost at Obama territory, I think, or more.
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, I think that his emotional bond with the leaders who are older in the black community is much stronger than Hillary, just as you say. But the statistics show that Hillary won the black vote over Bernie much more strongly than Joe did, and that Bernie did make some inroads. He tried really hard. The irony of all this is that what Bernie wanted to happen happened. The candidate with no money to launch an organization or a ground game overtook the moneyed, well-established person in a massive upset because of the turnout of first-time voters and people of color.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's what happened.
Which is amazing.
Something?
It's amazing. Yeah.
No, it's wonderful. I mean, the big loser was money.
Yeah. That's what's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that that
I'm
was
for
actually,
that. I'm for that.
And that was also true with Obama, wasn't it? In terms of his grassroots organizing and kind of ground game, and so much of his money actually came from smaller donations.
Yeah,
well, that's true of Bernie equally. The thing was, Biden hadn't been able to raise any money.
Exactly. It had no organization in these states. It's like, I still kind of don't get it. Except
I hope Bloomberg is now about to give him some support. He said he's going to.
Apparently he is. And that's
but I want to redirect us at something. We have a big, I don't know how many really young people are going to listen to what we're saying right now. But there is a big issue going on. This generational divide.
It's
kids
huge.
Are pissed, and they are not ready to go gently into the.
They don't vote.
Well, but a lot of them have been dedicated, and he really has raised a lot of consciousness, and there's a lot of passion behind it. And this revolution and this fundamental systems change.
People don't want to postpone the revolution 4 years. If you're young, you're looking at your future, you're building your family.
Oh, and you're looking at climate change.
Hell with that. Yeah, exactly.
There is a sense of utter dissatisfaction with the limited benignness of the Obama years and how more fundamental and radical change is necessary. And the young people are not wrong about any of that. That's why I really do think it's important that Bernie stay in the race. I do think he has to tone down the negativity, but he has to build a movement and have that movement really change the calculus of where political power resides. Because if all Biden has to do is counter Trump, he's going to be pulled in a direction that is not adequately.
Although you have to admit, it would feel real good if Trump, after 4 years, was replaced by Obama's vice president. I would like that. Okay? What a loser.
Me too.
Okay, here's a question for you.
All right.
So, assuming that Biden will get the nomination, who's his VP? Who should it be?
Pete, no.
I like Pete.
I'd be good for that, but I guess you got to be somewhat
Elizabeth
strategic.
Warren is my suggestion.
Elizabeth Warren. But what about?
I think we've got to. I think that the split with the progressive wing is a big deal.
But what about the swing vote, Terry? What about the swing vote? Nobody talks about the swing vote. Let's talk about that.
Well, I think Biden and Bloomberg, who will be funding this and messaging it, are the address to the swing vote.
Uh-huh. So you think it needs to be a progressive in that role to bring some people from further left? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that makes good sense strategically. I worry a little bit about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I worry a little bit about it because Biden's old. I think the vice president's going to really matter. And and I'm not sure that Elizabeth Warren has any appeal to the people who aren't already going to vote for Joe Biden. I guess some,
I feel a little bad for her. I don't know what happened to her campaign. She was really strong, and she was strong in the debates, and then she just lost momentum. And I don't feel like I can understand it. And I do, I have a little wounding as a woman, and really feeling like somehow between Bernie not throwing his support Hillary's way and James Comey with the emails right there at the end, and whatever the Russians were doing with Trump, I feel a little bit like, I don't want to be just in that sore loser category, but I do feel like what happens to the women? Like, what goes on here? It feels like
you get the rug pulled out from under you at the very last.
It kind of feels that way. I can't explain. I mean, from a policy point of view, everybody knows she's super sound. She's working extremely hard.
Yeah.
I mean, she made a few strategic mistakes with Medicare for All and whatnot, but I mean, she's a fighter, as she loves to say, and she's a driven and she can also be very compassionate. So what happened? I don't even really know what happened to her campaign.
Yeah.
Like, she seemed to be holding her own, and then suddenly she was just kind of out of it, a little bit similarly to Biden, where they both just kind of dropped out.
I discounted them both a week ago.
She lost Massachusetts, where she's the senator, and she lost Oklahoma, where she's so fond of talking about where she grew up.
Here's what I think, is that I'm with Tom Friedman, who wrote the column that's been passed around a lot. I talked about it, actually.
Is it the Team of Rivals column?
Yes, exactly. The Team of Rivals column. And Elizabeth Warren can be just in her proper place, the head of the consumer department or whatever, it would be appropriate.
Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Yeah, there you go. And boy, that would be a sweet spot for her. And
she'd be great.
And I do think that it would be really smart for Biden, if he is the nominee indeed, to come up with that team of rivals where he says, here's who's my vice president's going to be. Of course, we always.
Where's he going to put Bernie?
Secretary of Treasury, Friedman suggested.
Yeah, that's right. I don't see that happening.
I don't either.
In either case.
I see Warren there more than I do.
Maybe she's Secretary of Treasury, and that would satisfy your thing, Terry, about giving the progressives something really meaty. I just want to in case people don't know what we're talking about with the team of rivals. It's that the Biden or Bernie would come up with this whole team, the whole cabinet, and run with them against Trump. And so we were talking about how to fit Elizabeth Warren into that. And how about Amy? Diane, you were asking about, or you brought her up. What do you think?
I mean, it's probably a cliche, Health and Human Services. I don't know. I mean, I think about that, and I think about what a mess it is. I think about housing. I don't know. Yeah.
What do you think about her as a candidate?
As a candidate for president? She won my respect. I mean,
and being maybe vice president with Biden.
I mean, I've thought about that. I think that I became a little more familiar with her record. I became a little more familiar with her policies. I kind of liked how she comported herself on the stage. I did not like that one debate with Pete where they were at each other. I thought that was unfortunate. But she earned my respect.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I think the Heartland ticket would be very appealing.
Mm-hmm.
and that would be Biden and her.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, all the women who ran earned my respect. I mean, I thought getting to know Kamala Harris was interesting and worthwhile. You know, I've liked listening to Elizabeth Warren. I think she's super sharp and really, I don't know, she has a level of commitment and drive that's kind of unparalleled in a way.
Yes,
And I respect that, you know?
Yeah,
I do too.
Right.
I do too.
you know, my thoughts about it are that people are right that Biden is not a strong enough political athlete for the rigors to lead. And if we have a campaign like past campaigns in which it's all candidate focused and that individual and their energy has to drive the whole campaign, we can't make it.
Right.
But I think that Biden can marshal a team of surrogates, and
Yeah.
don't underestimate Barack Obama and Michelle Obama when we think of those people, because
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
sure, Pete and Amy and many others, but he's got the best of the best, and you know, all the musicians that aren't at the Bernie rallies. You know, he's got a lot going for him, and the dynamism, like, you know, would I go to a rally in my county if Pete was? Yeah, you know, there's a lot of magnetism. There's a lot of star power and charisma and energy. And if we begin to get the feeling that there is this kind of
I hear what you're saying.
like a virtuous team, a move, you know, something of a movement.
I love what you're saying, Terry, and it's like something has to give. I mean, if we look at this primary process so far, were the debates really helpful? Sorry.
Well, I think the way that the debates were useful was back when there were 20 people running and we saw everybody on stage and we heard them in those first 2 or 3 debates, and we saw that, oh wow, there's a really healthy field of candidates. And in a way, for me, that relates to what you're saying now about the team of rivals. It's like, actually, we got to know everybody in that circumstance. And if we had the sense that it was kind of all of them or more of them rather than just Biden, that might be really electrifying if there were some way to really communicate that. I think where the debates became unfortunate is as it became more and more competitive, and there was this sense they had to start knocking each other out. And then there was this kind of Trump-like quality to the whole thing. And it was, I mean, a friend of mine, a student of mine is here from Columbia, and he watched it and he said, oh my God, the second to the last debate was like reality television. He was appalled.
It's
absolutely
appalling.
Appalled.
I don't know.
He actually thought that Bloomberg maintained his dignity.
Yeah.
And he came away feeling good about him because he felt like he maintained his dignity in relationship to that onslaught of attacks by Elizabeth Warren. So I think the debates did something that maybe we could draw on now based on what you're talking about with this idea of more than just the candidate, but the entire team somehow.
Yeah. Could we imagine a debate between Trump and Biden? I mean,
I'd rather not.
Is that going to happen? I mean, would we have to endure such a thing?
It occurs to me that Biden should decline to do it.
Yes, maybe.
I think the condition of the debate would absolutely have to be that the moderators controlled the mic and there could be no interruptions.
Well, and also I heard the Pod Save America Obama guys talking about how, you know, the debate should be hosted by PBS. There shouldn't be a live audience. The mics should be silenced when they need to be. You know, there's a way that they're playing on this kind of, you know, media frenzy and a lot of polarization. And it just ends up making them look, I mean, for me, I don't know. I don't like the vibe. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Not at the end, Jeff. I enjoyed the first ones because they allowed me to get to know the candidates a little bit.
I think you make a good case for the first ones, to see them all at an equal stage. And, you know, they get their 3 minutes.
Which reminds me, what do you guys think of the fact that about 15 minutes after I made my controversial Facebook post, Marianne Williamson said that this was a coup, that the coalescing around Biden was a coup.
Yeah, which she later retracted, I guess, for the
Did
incendiary.
she? Oh, I didn't hear that.
She said it was incendiary. But
what does that even mean? To me, what that means is it's sore losers. You know, it's like,
well,
What does it mean it was a coup? What
You
does
know,
that
I
mean?
feel a little curious because, you know, I've met Marianne, and although I have complex perspectives,
But you
I
live in the
very much
Bay.
appreciated much of what she had to say. And for her to be as fierce and tending toward being a sore loser, sort of, you know, I need to account for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also you have to account for where you live in the country, and you have to account for where she lives in the country, and then you have to compare it to where Jeff is from and where I'm from, and all these moderate Democrats who have a really different sensibility, and they're thinking about industry, and some of them are in the military, and not all of them are left of left of left. A lot of them are actually just looking for a candidate that they feel can, you know, keep healthcare passed and actually, you know, do a few things in relationship to employment and income. You know, it's like, I think sometimes people in the California world on the left forget the heartland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how important it is. And so when I hear coup, what I hear is, you know, that all those people out there that didn't vote early, because part of what happened with Bernie, as I understand it, is that he got a lot of the early vote because people were uncertain.
Yeah,
and then,
if anything, the institutional structure seemed to be favoring Bernie.
yeah,
Especially against a surge from Joe. We didn't take Joe seriously 7 days ago, including the media.
but
I
he
mean,
you know,
always,
this Tom
his sad retreat from New Hampshire to South Carolina is like, oh, poor Joe. I hope he gets through this.
Yeah.
know.
Well,
So
then Tom
I don't see
Friedman
where things were being spun
column
for Bernie.
assumed that it would either be Bernie or Bloomberg.
Yes,
they were,
exactly.
and it was published, you know,
I know.
less than a week ago.
I know. That's something. Yeah.
Well, the one thing that concerned me, and this was a while ago, and just speaking to Biden a little bit, and this idea of these late voters who couldn't make up their minds and didn't know how to cast their vote. And then when he came strong out of South Carolina, and then Amy and Pete dropped out, then suddenly that choice became easier, because in a certain way it did come down in a way to Bernie and Biden. But when I listened to a editorial on the Daily, and it's probably been now, my guess is going on 2 months ago, and they were in Pennsylvania, so they were in a swing state, and they were looking at the fracking industry. Did any of you guys hear that?
I don't think I remember.
Well, they interviewed people on climate change, and the climate change people said, we'll vote for Bernie, but we won't vote for Biden. And the fracking industry wanted to be able to not vote for Trump and vote for Biden, and there was no way they were going to vote for Bernie, and there were 60,000 of them. You know, it's enough to make a huge difference. I mean, so that way in which the Democratic Party has these two really different camps, and yet we're sort of under this one big umbrella, but there's real differences in how people see the world. Yeah. So I worried about that.
Well, from a developmental perspective, it's center of gravity modern, keep things running, versus postmodern, move into the egalitarian, world-centric, eco,
Yeah.
And I think that move is inevitable, but what's the next move? It's hard to know.
I mean, I really have serious concern. If Bernie were elected and able to begin to try to implement everything he was wanting to implement, the potential for there to be all kinds of political violence, dirty tricks, all the kind of ugliness that is organizing itself on the right, and a kind of pitched battle, and the cold Civil War becoming, in places at least, a hot Civil War.
Right.
Some of that is going to be risky even to a Biden presidency. The reaching out to include even many Republicans that Biden can do and that Bernie would never try. Mm-hmm. It seems to me may be necessary even to preserve civil order over this period of time, if we have big enough whammies hitting us that are disturbing to everybody's fundamental sense of safety. And we just don't know, but those risks shouldn't be ignored altogether in a discussion like this.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, they've been put on the table. I think the general rage machine on the left overstates all of it, frankly. But that's my 2 cents.
I love being on the swing between the two of you on this, because I have both inclinations.
Yeah.
You guys know that expression, apocalyptimist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who generated it, but it works for me. But I do. I mean, that's why I just feel it's so important. I mean, we're back to that. So what other questions do we have, Jeff?
I have one.
Yeah.
So here we are, and this whole podcast, we haven't talked about Tulsi.
Well,
I have a couple Tulsi people writing me saying, you got to pay attention to Tulsi.
Hillary busted her already.
Yeah, I know. What was that about? I forget.
Hillary said she's basically preparing to run as an independent and swing the vote and split the vote so that Trump can win. She's going to do the Jill Stein thing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, Hillary's
at the behest of Russia.
Yes, and she says she's up to no good.
Yeah.
She said it a while ago.
Yeah.
Called her a Russian asset.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
And she was Hillary
But
was
can somebody be sincerely sympathetic to not being in polarization with Russia and not get that charge? Now, you know what I mean? I mean, can you be honestly sympathetic with Russia and not be a Russian asset?
Well, I think at this point it's pretty hard to be.
I'm not convinced that she's a Russian asset. I mean, I don't know enough, but I think she believes it. You know, so
maybe
why not? Trump does.
They always say never attribute to malice.
Yes.
That which can be explained by ignorance, but I
or sincerity.
But
or incompetence.
Or okay, all of it, but not necessarily any of it yet. I don't know. And if she runs as a third-party candidate, there we're starting to get a little more clarity on your thesis, Di. But
Hillary's the one that said it, and I thought she was out of her mind. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And now here she is, and I'm like, "Oh my God, Hillary was telling the truth." She's the first one that talked to Trump about the Russians in that second debate, where she said, "You're basically a puppet for the Russians," and I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, I thought she was just out of her mind. Turns out she wasn't. So I'm skeptical of this woman.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, Jill Stein did not help us in 2016, and Ralph Nader did not help us in the Gore Bush years.
And many Bernie supporters
went to Jill Stein.
I mean, this is recent history, and I wish there were. I think we should question ourselves, and I think that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel disappointed in the younger radical Bernie supporters for being so righteous and so sure of themselves and so lacking in that kind of self-interrogation.
I feel like I'm the female gossip on the call. Did you guys hear? I keep passing along what Hillary said. But did you guys hear what she said about Bernie?
Yeah. Nobody likes him anyway.
She's furious. She is just furious.
Wow.
And then she goes so far as to say no one likes him. He's never had a piece of legislation passed ever. And, it's like she's just not holding back. So.
Wow. This is her new podcast.
I don't know where. No,
it was an interview
I read that in the paper
on one of the networks. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Okay. Because I know she has a new podcast. I don't know if it's
as long as
I don't think it's launched yet.
I see.
As long as I'm in this tone of gossip, the other thing that I want to bring up is, oh my gosh, did you guys see that crazy headline of? I have to read it to you guys because it is so crazily funny. Jill Biden's epic tussle in split-second blocking maneuver. She protects her husband from lunging vegans.
Yes, I know.
And here's the picture. Look at Jill Biden.
I know. I saw it in real time. It's like, Jesus Lord.
And when apparently it's the second time she's had to do it because apparently he doesn't have any security, the former vice
let's
president.
get some security here.
But this headline, Jill Biden's epic tussle in split-second blocking maneuver. She protects husband from lunging vegans. We're shouting. And so when they ask her, I guess it wasn't after this one, but apparently she did something similar recently and they asked her about it. And she said, I'm a girl from Philly. That was her response. So that made me like
That's
her.
Appealing. Yeah.
She literally was blocking people, literally physically. Yeah. And all this stuff on Twitter is like, Jill Biden's a badass. You may not like Joe, but you better like Jill after that. Yeah. Can you imagine what it was like to be him last night?
I know.
He was just high as a kite. I'm sure he was in a bar.
Yeah, God bless him.
Drinks.
I thought his speech was terrific. It was teleprompter and everything, but it was so.
Are we worried about Joe's mental health?
I'm not.
I think that he's fine, but I think he's getting older, and there is a certain kind of on your feet, quick, articulate, cutting, crowd winning efficacy that he's not great at. And
he's not that much older than Trump, though, is he? A couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, he's 77 and Trump's 73.
Yeah,
I just checked that. Yeah.
Okay.
Bernie's 78.
Well, I feel in a certain way terrible that there are no women, there are no Black people, there are no Latino people, all those people on the stage, and we're down to the 3 old white guys. I mean, I think if Biden puts the right people around him, he'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I'm going to really be watching Arizona, because that's the state where we have a Senate seat that's definitely in play. And it's also got a lot of young Hispanic voters who have been mobilized effectively by Bernie. So it really isn't knowable to me who will be stronger, and it'll tell us something about whether this thesis that Biden is going to be better at bringing in a strong Senate is passing the test of direct experience.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I think that the one thing that I think the clarity now around who the moderate candidate is super helpful to everyone. People have been really confused about what do you think is going to happen with Warren? Is she going to?
Looks like she's going to drop out. She withdrew today to have a conversation with her advisors.
Did she?
That's generally, a signal for that. And I think that's great. And if we have clarity between Bernie and Biden, let's have it out.
Yeah.
For now. I mean, this is a big job, and people have to fight their way to get it.
Yeah. And if Bernie gets it, I'll definitely throw my support behind it.
Oh, energetically.
It's just the swing vote that concerns me. I just worry about because what one analysis I read is that in order for Bernie to win, he has to bring in 11% new young voters, and that Barack Obama only brought in 5% new Black voters when he ran for office. So they were saying it's a really, really difficult thing that we're asking him to do. And then Biden has to bring people over from Trump. Yeah. So that's been kind of one of the things that I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to comment on is the marked contrast between the 2 speeches that Bernie and Biden gave last night. Bernie's being an attack and a contrasting of himself with Biden, and in a way that exaggerated Biden's negatives, and Biden just being inclusive and appreciative and naming all the good people and being celebratory. I think that the difference in style between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie, and the fundamentally young people like Bernie, even though Bernie is grumpy. So why is that? Because Bernie is pretty much negative. Well, in a way, he's a truth teller. This world is really screwed up, and it really needs radical change. And naming that and being pissed off about it and being serious about changing it, this galvanizes a certain kind of support. But just in terms of psychology, we know that hope and positivity are just way more attractive, and they've succeeded over that kind of negativity again and again and again. We're seeing that happen. I think that there's an enduring polarity, a dialectic of progress in which Bernie and his supporters need to play an ongoing role, and it will be a straightener for, I think that the Biden coalition could win, but it will need that extra energy that will come from Bernie. There was a really interesting thing that Van Jones wrote, something like, Bernie is ready to fight for the young people, and Joe is ready to bring people together like the older people want. So we've got one person who's a fighter who can't love, and another person who's a lover who is shy to the fight. And we're going to need both if we're going to succeed. Something to that effect.
I love Van Jones.
I thought that was a thoughtful comment. It not fair. I think that Bernie obviously cares about people. It's not as if he can't love, but still, there's a fundamental polarity. It's going to have to. It's going to have to dynamically participate in every step of this process, all the way to November.
Well, what do you think about that, Jeff? What Terry just
Well,
said?
I think that's ideal. I don't think that that's Bernie's style or the style of his a lot of his followers. I think they'll sit it out. I think they'll, do what they did to Hillary. And I just think that welcome to democracy.
And what kind of numbers are those? How threatening is that?
Well, I think that particularly when you consider that, like you were saying, Terry, that the swing states that we're dealing with, I think Joe's going to take a lot from Trump. I think he's going to take a lot from the center. I think that modernists in general, if you look at developmentally, postmodernists loathe Trump. Traditionalists love Trump. Modernists are somewhere between embarrassed and outraged.
Yeah.
They may like what he's doing. They may like some of his policies, but that's not what they want their kids to see. And so, I'm all for go Joe, go now. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Enough already.
Everybody's weary and sick of the chaos. And I think a lot of traditionalists feel that way too.
I do too, actually.
And I think that Joe, by comparison, is like, oh, so he stutters. Oh, so he's not quick with the repartee. Oh, he forgets which state he's in.
Yeah. By the way, that was the theme of the Fox coverage this morning about Joe. I mean, they're running with the Joe's loony thing.
Yeah.
Which, makes me want to all the more not run with that, because I kind of see it too, but I'm not saying a word.
But I would say the other thing about that is, there's also a lot that Joe said during the debates and has said during the campaign. There's been a lot that he said that's been really intact.
No,
totally. I mean, he does have those moments, but it's like, God, if Trump were defeated by every error and faux pas and crude and abhorrent thing he said, apparently he just endures, and we can't tolerate a gaffe from Biden. That kind of sensitivity on our part is, it just gets on my nerves. It's like this guy can, as they say, he can walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and no one cares. Yeah. And if Joe stutters, we all have a heart attack.
Yeah.
I
think we're learning how to get through that now. I think we're learning about, this overexposure that we have in our culture, where a camera's on this guy. He's 77 years old. It's on him 5 hours a day or more. Yeah. It's like, give me a break.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And maybe
he's actually an amazing athlete when you consider his age and what he's out there doing, and, hour after event and decisions. God love him.
Trump is trying to take Biden down differently. He thinks he can run against Bernie and win. He knows with Biden so he's trying to take him out with all this charisma and his son and all that business. And so,
well, there's going to have to be all this storytelling, and this is where I think Bloomberg's. I didn't think Bloomberg was a good candidate, but I was very impressed by the psychological sophistication of his ads. And the intelligence with which they were placed, the way they reached me in multiple media and all that.
Yeah, me too.
And I think that he'll deploy that. What was going on was Joe was the poorest guy in the Senate. His other son was going to be a politician, so couldn't really go and do any kind of big money anything. And Hunter just was kind of he was both the less talented and according to the biographies, the guy who, his brother was staying in his home and he was going out to be the rainmaker and make money, and he was not going to have a career.
He didn't do anything that was illegal.
It's also not immoral.
It's also not immoral.
I think it's immoral. I'll draw the line there. I think this guy's being paid for his proximity to his father.
Absolutely.
And that I don't like. I'm not going to defend that. It's going to be well aired. This is good. It's already out there.
But compared to Trump's kids.
Thank you.
I mean, that's the thing that drives me crazy.
That's the comparison that Bloomberg is going to have to draw.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what are we even talking about here?
Yeah. There's going to be a counter narrative.
There has to be. For
everybody, this is the way of things. There's going to be a very coherent counter negative to Joe Biden. And it's going to, it's 30% of the population is going to go for it right off the bat.
Terry and I had this back and forth. I wasn't a great fan of Marianne Williamson, and it wasn't because of her platform and her views, there's just something in her affect that I have a hard time with. And I think maybe it's not unlike Elizabeth Warren, where I feel a little scolded somehow.
Exactly.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to, I'm not going to make that hugely solid, but I just noticed like something around where when Pete has talked for the most part, I felt quite drawn to what he has to say.
No, it's a wonderful thing. And Pete, as I've argued, is coming from integral consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's actually good news for humanity that the guy with integral consciousness came from nowhere, beyond nowhere, lower than nowhere, to become a major national political figure through his sheer multi-perspectivalism, his flexibility of mind, his online heart.
Would you say the same about Obama?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think those two are cut from the same cloth. And it's astonishing that they, Obama was a 2-term president, the black guy named Hussein.
Yeah, exactly.
It's powerful. Yes. All right. So we good with this?
I'm great.
Going once?
This has been totally fun.
Going twice?
Great to see you guys. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, what good fun.
Super fun.
Yeah. So
Bye, everybody.
thanks. Good to sort it all out for you, everybody. And stay in touch, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.